Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table A Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello and welcome to this episode of Surveyor Says. This is your host, Tim Burch. And what started out as going to be sharing of some sound bites from our NSPS lobbyist, Byrd, turned into a pretty good conversation with him. From Davis-Bacon to Ligado to a lot of other things going on, the FLARE Act, all leading up into the midterm elections. So we thought we would just go ahead and share that entire conversation with you because it's a lot of great stuff about what's happening in the surveying profession, both as practitioners and as the overall profession in licensing going forward. So please sit back and enjoy this conversation with Byrd here on Surveyor Says, the NSPS Podcast. Hey, joining us on the podcast this afternoon, it's a late Friday afternoon, and guess what? We ran down John Byrd, the NSPS lobbyist, and you know what? I was able to just capture him for long enough to, hey, let's see what's going on in the legislative world. And so, JB, thanks for taking a few moments here late on a Friday afternoon to really just kind of catch up on what all's going on. So, how are things in your legislative world?
Hey, Tim. Good afternoon. Great. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this again, and thanks for reaching out. You caught me at a good time, Tim, because this is August recess, and Congress was in session earlier this month for different reasons, but they are out now, back to their respective congressional districts and states. So this week has allowed, I think, a lot of folks on and off the Hill to catch up on all sorts of things, but also plan for the remainder of the third quarter and get into the fourth quarter of this year. And as everyone knows, as part of the 2-year election cycle and the end of the 117th Congress, the election season is just around the corner.
Oh, yes, exactly. Well, I thought we would catch up on a few things, a few announcements that have happened in the last few weeks. And, obviously the one that caught my attention, simply because I had the pleasure of being with you for our little presentation, but the National Academy of Sciences, they had an announcement about the report that you and I took part in with our little presentation. Why don't you catch us up on what that is all about for early September?
Absolutely. So, Tim, kind of to walk through where we are in the process for the GPS interference issue, and what originally started as Light Squared and is now Ligado. Back in April of 2020, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, approved what is known as the Ligado order, which is the current version of the company that we think will create interference with GPS signals and the devices, the manufactured items that surveying profession uses day in and day out for all sorts of client needs and projects. So we've been on top of this. We've joined actually 3 different versions of coalitions to stay on top of this, Tim. And then what that allows us to do is to add our name to letters that go to the president, that go to the Federal Communications Commission, that go to all sorts of variety of other federal agencies, but also to our friends and allies in Congress, in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. And one of the things that culminated was interest on the Senate side to have a bill introduced in both the Senate and the House. And as you'll remember, last summer, NSPS members did reach out to their U.S. senators and House members to request that the members of Congress co-sponsor a bill known as the Retain GPS and Satellite Communications Act, S2166 in the Senate, which is now co-sponsored by 4 other U.S. senators. The bill was introduced by Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma. And the House bill is H.R. 4634. That has 23 bipartisan co-sponsors.
Oh, nice.
So congratulations to NSPS members and their state affiliates for reaching out to their respective congressional delegations last summer. NSPS was part of the introduction of those bills, and NSPS has been helpful to add co-sponsors to those bills. And as a result of that, Senator Inhofe works very closely with the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Jack Reed of Rhode Island. They work together in a bipartisan manner on what's known as the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And in the 2022 version of the defense bill, the two of them worked together to add a provision into the bill that required a new study, a non-biased study by the National Academies of Science to actually once and for all, hopefully, come down one way or the other on whether, number one, there will be GPS interference from Ligado, and if so, is it harmful interference? And so over the last 8 to 12 months, Tim, that National Academies of Science panel has been bringing in experts on both sides of the issue and to hear their respective testimony or expertise on whether there will be interference, and if so, will it be harmful interference. And as you know, Tim, you had that opportunity at
Yes.
January of 2022, your first month as executive
Yes.
director. You were weighing in on behalf of the profession on one of the most important issues ongoing for the profession. And maybe I could turn it over to you to Tim, and then I'll finish up on the rest of where we are with it.
Oh yeah, that was definitely jumping right into the deep end of the pool. It was great that we had the opportunity, even together. I mean, we, being at the Oregon conference, but being able to step in to do that. But yeah, it was a great experience being able to explain to those educators why this is a harmful situation. And I think one thing that really brought it home, at least for me, and hopefully a lot of our practitioners as well, is a lot of that legacy equipment that's still out there. And I think if nothing else, that has to be at least acknowledged and recognized, that how much harm this whole Ligado situation is going to be, and to be able to present our case and facts of the number of practitioners, the amount of disruption, I mean, harmful disruption, it was going to be to not just our profession, but to the general public. I don't think it's really, in a lot of ways, I think it was been glossed over with the whole Ligado thing. So yeah, I appreciated your counsel putting everything together, and I think it was a great opportunity, and I think it was quite well received, and some of our follow-up conversations and correspondence was very well received. So thank you for your leadership and putting that all together. Well, one, getting the opportunity, and then B, really kind of leading the charge and being able to help me along as a rookie.
No, you did, Tim. You did incredibly well. You represented the profession incredibly well. You were taken incredibly seriously by the panelists, and that culminated in numerous tough questions. They were not throwing softballs in the Q&A portion of your presentation. And I think it was about 3 or 4 months later, we did receive some follow-up questions in writing from the panel itself, wanting additional clarification. So it wasn't one of these things where you just show up, speak for 30 or 60 minutes, and then you're done with. They were, as a part of the congressionally authorized panel, they wanted to make sure that their deliverable that they are planning to release and publish on September the 8th, 11 a.m. Eastern time on September the 8th, that is thoroughly done, and it's literally going to be on the record, congressional record, because it's a part of the defense bill from last year. And then any member of Congress, whether in the Senate or the House, will have basically the conclusions of this report. However, we don't know yet what that report will look like, Tim. So we are needles through our various memberships and coalitions and alliances on Capitol Hill and with other interested stakeholders. We are keeping up to speed on that. I just had a session yesterday morning with a key alliance that we're a part of to get additional intel. And so, yes, we are keeping on top of this. I think, Tim, the best thing we can do from a profession is to be able to respond to whatever the final report says. And there are one of three potential outcomes in our view that we should be preparing all of our state affiliates and then at the federal level for the national voice to continue to advocate. Number one would be a victory, that the report says there's clearly interference and it's harmful. And potentially one of the outcomes from that is that could be leveraged to then go back to the FCC and have them request them and have them take the action that we've been asking them all along to do, which is a stay or reverse or just stop Ligado from moving forward. So that would be the best outcome. The worst outcome would be the report comes back and says, actually, there is either interference or there's no interference, but it's not harmful.
Right.
Not impact, in our case, the profession. So we will have to understand that decision and figure out a way to navigate what does that mean from a political point of view, but also from a practical point of view. And sometimes it's a little different. Sometimes it can be the same. And then we should also be prepared for a third outcome, which is it's either neutral, it pushes the decision-making to later down the road, and it acknowledges that it could be harmful, it may not be, but it's basically ambivalent to all the different stakeholders. And it ends up being somewhat of a neutral report that neither side is going to be happy with. And so we should also be preparing for, again, the political side of that and the practical side of that as far as preparing the profession. So that's where we are, Tim. I wish I had something more definitive to share. All we know is that the date, the time, and that NSPS has been given the opportunity to weigh in, provide expertise, and be a part of the entire discussion and relevant, we think, outcome when it all comes down to next month when the report is released and provided to both the Armed Services Committee in the House as well as to the Senate.
And I guess one thing I should probably add, kind of a little bit of a footnote to that, and assuming even if it's a positive outcome, the FCC is still deadlocked at 2-2, and we're still waiting on a fifth appointee, though, aren't we? Is that where we're still at?
Well, yes, and you're exactly right. So there, Gigi Sohn is the current nominee for. So think of it this way: the FCC exists at full power 5 commissioners. As you mentioned, there are only 4, and it's our understanding that the original Ligado order from April 2020 was approved by a 5-0 vote. Now, things have changed. NSPS got involved individually, but also as part of coalitions. And we've worked it to the point that we think that if there was another vote right now of the 4 commissioners, that would be evenly split now, 2-2. So right off the bat, we're making progress on the issue from 5-0 now to 2-2. And to your point, Tim, the 5th commissioner will be, in our view, the deciding vote. And the question is, will the 5th commissioner, whether it's Gigi Sohn or perhaps someone else that may be nominated in the future, which which side of the equation will that commissioner take? Will the commissioner agree to continue the Ligado order, and therefore we might lose that vote 3-2? Or will the new commissioner decide to stay the order and reverse course and stop the Ligado order from moving forward? And that would be obviously a victory for NSPS and all the other stakeholders in our various coalitions pushing back against Ligado order. So that's a very good point. The other thing that you may want to just talk about, Tim, I know we didn't briefly discuss this in prep, but do you want to talk about how you were brought in for the NSRS congressional briefing for NOAA, and you had a chance to discuss the relevance to GPS and NSRS?
Oh yeah, you're right. I had forgotten about that. We're able to take part in a short presentation on behalf of NOAA and NGS on the modernization of the National Spatial Reference System and our NSRS, and how important that is, and the monies that need to be funded going forward, and how important that is to maintain that. It was nice. Was included with Brent Jones from ERISA and ERSI to talk about from the public perspective, from the practitioner perspective of how important that is going forward, and how we need to maintain that funding. So once again, it's opportunities that NSPS has been leveraging through our Government Affairs Committee, through our relationships with the government agencies. That it's I guess it's very nice to be recognized as being able to speak professionally to some of these topics, to some of these funding opportunities, because it is all about the future of geospatial data. And you're right. I'd forgotten about that one, and it was a great opportunity, and I think it was very well received.
And what I think helped to trigger that, Tim, was in your presentation back in January before the National Academy of Science study for the Ligado GPS interference issue. You spent at least one, maybe several slides discussing how prominent GPS is, but specifically how diverse the NSPS membership is, and how many alliances, how many different working groups we have with the various federal agencies that have gone on record on our side of the GPS issue and have taken a stance against the Ligado order. And so here we have a lot of collaboration, not just among NSPS, but the federal agencies that we partner with all the time. And there was basically a unified voice, and we were able to communicate that on behalf of other agencies that did not have the opportunity to have an audience with the National Academies of Science panel, but we did. But we helped them out by showcasing that, yes, they were part of this. And then several months later, when you had a chance to go in front of that NOAA sponsored panel, that was before congressional staff and appropriations staffers. So that was a big deal for you, Tim, not to double dip, but to make sure that everyone in the surveying profession was well represented.
Well, exactly. And that's the interesting thing that, when people ask, well, what does NSPS do for its members, for its profession, what have you? Well, it is the hard work of the Government Affairs Committee. It's the hard work of a lot of the volunteers that go into this. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to be out front and deliver that message. So, but it's also good to have a partner like JB to tag along and help me get this stuff done. So we look good together. So I appreciate that. Speaking of advocacy and speaking of representation at a national level, we got to have a little shout out to Mr. Gary Thompson. He's taken on a pretty significant role this year. Longtime NSPS member, and really he's done so much behind the scenes. But JB, you want to talk to a little bit more about what the role he's taken on, and a couple of the some of the things that he's going to be engaged with in the next couple of months.
Absolutely, Tim. So Gary Thompson is very well respected not just within the surveying profession, but by federal stakeholders, federal agencies, or other folks, whether it's members of Congress and senators, for his expertise he provides. And I'll provide you two different examples, Tim. Currently, in this year, under the Geospatial Data Act, one of the things the GDA of 2018 authorized was to codify not just the Federal Geographic Data Committee, the FGDC, of which roughly 30 federal agencies are members of, but the bill also authorized and codified the National Geospatial Advisory Committee, the NGAC. And this is a group of 25 to 30 or so outside stakeholders, meaning they're not typically with federal agencies. They're typically representing state and local units of government. They're representing academia. They're representing the public and private sectors. But Gary Thompson is not only the NSPS representative on the NGAC, this year he chairs it. And therefore, literally any kind of issue, any kind of meeting agenda, it goes through Gary. And if the FGDC staff, if Tanya Trujillo, who's the chair of the FGDC, any kind of coordination, it requires Gary Thompson. And so Gary has been, I think, a 2-time member of the NGAC, and he took some time off in between those 2 sessions. But this second tour, if you will, on the NGAC, he's been, his stature continues to grow, but also his influence on the NGAC continues to grow. And that means the surveying profession, through Gary's leadership, is also at the highest level of recommending and advising these federal agencies on anything that's surveying, mapping, and geospatial connected at the federal level, whether it's budgets, whether it's policies, programs, the coordination, and how do all the different stakeholders, again, whether they're federal or non-federal, come together and work on policy. So that's the first thing that Gary really, I think, has been doing a great job with. And again, his peers recognize his leadership. The second thing kind of popped up recently, Tim, and this is a big deal for coastal communities specifically, but in North Carolina, there are 2 members of Congress from coastal congressional districts and 1 U.S. senator that are working this year on what's called the second version of the North Carolina Water Summit. And this is primarily a combination of flood inundation, but also how do local communities, whether it's from the mountain to the Piedmont to the shoreline regions of the state, how they deal with coastal inundation issues, because they're all kind of connected, right? But Gary has been invited and has been confirmed to speak on October the 12th of this year before this summit. And I believe he's going to have his own speaking slot. It's not going to be a part of a panel. And he'll be able to highlight all sorts of different angles from a North Carolina's perspective, because that's the reason, that's the stakeholder kind of perspective. But what the members of Congress and their staff recognize what Gary brings to the table is the national perspective. And how can North Carolina learn from what's being done, best practices, lessons learned from other states or from other federal agencies, where North Carolina agencies can then harness and complement and work together and collaborate on. So we're really excited about that. Again, two U.S. representatives, House of Representative members, and then 1 U.S. senator are confirmed to be there and to provide remarks. And Gary's going to have the same platform. And so in another way, he's going to be able to educate members of Congress and a U.S. senator on federal policy that directly impacts North Carolina and other coastal communities by default.
Well, kudos to Gary for accomplishing becoming chair of the NGAC. But absolutely, this is a big deal. You're right, a big deal for the surveying profession, and to be able to be recognized and to provide a part of the presentation along with a couple of key legislators in that area. That's we're very fortunate to have somebody like Gary on our team putting this stuff together. So that is incredible. And also, speaking of incredible, I do believe you had the opportunity to do some testimony recently on some things. Why don't you fill us in on? You were there for some lively debate on some key topics, but let us know how what went on with your testimony recently.
Yes, Tim, is really exciting to help represent the profession before a congressional hearing. And fortunately, this is something that the opportunity. Now, what happened was on July the 19th. So, oh my gosh, a month ago today. Isn't that hard to believe?
Yeah, it's already been a month. Yes,
it's August 19th. Yeah, so a month to July 19th. I had the opportunity, the honor to provide congressional testimony before the House Committee on Natural Resources. There's a subcommittee called the Energy and Mineral Resources Subcommittee. It has jurisdiction over, among other federal policies and agencies, but more specifically, the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS. And I was asked to provide testimony during what's known as a legislative hearing, where different bills are subject to congressional and committee evaluation. So the bills were not moved, they were not marked up, but they were simply brought in witnesses, some experts, to talk about various bills. Of the 4 bills that were on the agenda for the hearing, 2 have a major impact, we believe, on the surveying profession. The first one will be a bill that a lot of folks have already heard about. It's called the Federal Land Asset Inventory Reform Act. We call it FLAIR, the FLAIR Act, HR 5522, introduced by Congressman Ron Kind, a Democrat from Wisconsin, and Congressman Bruce Westerman, a Republican of Arkansas. Mr. Westerman also happens to be the ranking member of the full Committee on Natural Resources. So we had both a congressional member of Wisconsin, a Democrat, and a congressional member from Arkansas, a Republican, work together in a bipartisan manner to introduce the bill. The bill would create a comprehensive, uniform database for every parcel, every property, every asset that the federal government owns, and to make sure we have one of these comprehensive, accurate databases. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those right now that's accurate and is uniform and comprehensive. So I had the opportunity to talk about how NSPS fully supports the bill as written, and for the committee to take prompt action and try to get it marked up in what we call get it out of committee, so that the full House can then have an opportunity to vote on the House bill. That was the first bill, Tim. Mm-hmm. The second bill is somewhat of a newer bill. It's been around for now, I think, 2 Congresses, called the Sinkhole Mapping Act, Hr 3681. This bill would actually authorize a new program in the U.S. Geological Survey to detect and map sinkholes at a national level. Previously, USGS has done pilots on different areas of the country, but this would create a comprehensive, organized program to track as many of these sinkholes as possible. Fortunately, what I was able to testify from a USGS perspective, and more importantly from an NSPS perspective, is that NSPS has been one of the leaders in advocating for increased funding for the 3D elevation program, of 3DEP, within USGS, which is the nationwide LIDAR program. And LIDAR has been used in pilot programs to detect these sinkholes. So the goal of my testimony around this bill was not to have a brand new program that reinvents the wheel, but to leverage an existing program in USGS, the 3DEP program, to help satisfy the goals of the bill, the Sinkhole Mapping Act. So we did work very closely with Wisconsin, Dick Lyman, director, to make sure that Congressman Kine knew that Wisconsin was fully behind his leadership on the bill, and obviously continues to want to help the congressman get the bill over the finish line before the end of this Congress. Overall, I did take one or two other questions from the committee members, from the chair and the ranking member of the subcommittee from California, Mr. Lowenthal, a Democrat, and a Republican from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber. So again, this was a bipartisan hearing. The bills were bipartisan, and it allowed me the opportunity again to help make sure that the surveying profession's voice was heard in the halls of Congress that day.
Well, and I was able to listen in for a majority of that testimony and those discussions, and couldn't have been prouder. I mean, you do represent us quite well as we've talked about, but no, it was very much appreciated. And this just goes to the testament of the like, once again, the hard work of the Government Affairs Committee and the hardworking volunteers and the people that represent us, like you, JB. So thank you. That was very, very well represented on our part.
And Tim, one last point about that hearing is that I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up John Pelletiello and how he's testified before,
yes,
at least on the FLARE Act, and how sinkhole mapping can be impacted by LIDAR. But John's leadership, not only on these bills, but his relationships with USGS over the years, we got to the point where we were very much coordinating with our friends in USGS. In fact, we were provided some imagery from USGS to utilize and to showcase during the hearing. And so it really is a team approach, Tim. You're exactly right about that. Between Pat Smith's old leadership, if you will, the Government Affairs Committee, Mark Sargent, running point now on the committee, your leadership, Kurt Sumner's leadership, what you're seeing is, as a different passing of the torches, if you will, the consistency is there in the programming, and members of Congress get it. And they're asking for NSPS to come up and speak and on behalf of the profession. So just want to point out that a lot of different folks have had a role to play. I just happened to be the person delivering the message that day.
You're right. There has been the passing of the torches this last year or so, and the nice thing is we're not skipping a beat and continuing leading that good charge on behalf of our professional surveying profession everywhere. So that's awesome. Speaking of John, I should mention, as I'm getting ready to ask you about as we're coming up to the midterms, and I know this was more in John's wheelhouse, but we've had several people ask us, what's going on with Davis-Bacon? And so I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit and just kind of give people an idea of the 47,000 responses they had for Davis-Bacon. Where do we think an outcome comes to that, to the rules and the review of Davis-Bacon?
Great question, Tim. I wish I could get fully into the weeds on this. I can't. However, we do know that earlier today, the notice of proposed rulemaking opportunity has popped up. We've seen the language. We were working with our coalition allies, surveying profession, and several others are aligned in different trade associations, but also other professional societies. And we've had over the last probably 4 to 6 weeks, lots of conference calls. John Pelletiello has been all over this, and we've been circulating. One of the coalitions we're a part of is Cough Pace, the coalition for all sorts of opportunities to defend the Brooks Act. But when it comes to the Coalition for Federal Procurement of Architect and Engineering Services, how do federal agencies leverage and utilize not just architects and engineers, but professional surveyors for professional services? And how does the Davis-Bacon expansion, in our belief, how does that play in? Well, we just had a big kind of call this morning and email exchange with all of our friends whether it's the American Institute of Architects to Civil Engineers, ASCE, and several other folks that we work very closely on. And we're still trying to read through what was released. I believe it was yesterday morning, but also there was an update this morning as well. Overall, this is very political, and it's being driven by the administration because they're not able right now to do this legislatively. So they're trying to reverse what happened. So if you take a look, Tim, at what happened originally in 2013 with the Davis-Bacon issue overall, the Obama administration produced an all-agency memo, an AAM 212, I believe.
Yes, 212.
Davis-Bacon to surveying crews. And that broke over 50 years of tradition without any form of public comment. So now, after the Trump administration rescinded that 212 of, I believe, AAM 235 back in December of 2020, what the Biden administration did is they took their time and kind of worked with their friends in the labor movement and came up with all sorts of things to put back in that the Trump administration had stricken from the Obama administration. And so the expansion, we think, is back in, and it actually may have actually worsened the expansion beyond what the Obama administration did back in 2013. So we are still in the middle of reading through everything. Whatever version of a game plan we can take at this point, we are still putting together. Maybe it's something we'll have to share by the fall business meeting in October, but hopefully we'll have it sooner than that. But at least we can have a more comprehensive debrief at that point to share.
Sure. Like I said, just wanted to give people a heads up that it's not going away, that there was a lot of, obviously it generated a lot of comments and a lot of buzz, and it's something that we're staying on top of. So we'll like you said, we'll share what we can, when we can, however we can. So I guess that kind of led up to the last question I had about, we're getting close to the midterms. I know you've been out there in a few fundraisers, few things. I can't imagine we're going to be anything else other than kind of business as usual with the differences of the parties. But bottom line is, I think we're still working everything to the benefit of the profession the best we can.
You're right, Tim. And so, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up John Warren and his leadership as the NSPS PAC chairman.
Exactly.
This really does, in some cases, well, for most cases, it'll go hand in hand with policy. So what the PAC is structured to do and the way it operates, it's in a very bipartisan manner. And John Warren has really standardized the membership of the committee to make sure that any contributions, voluntary contributions that any NSPS member is more than welcome to provide to the Political Action Committee, the PAC that NSPS has, that money is spent as wisely as possible and as frugally as possible. And so my job is to obviously be the interface with members of Congress, whether they're House members or senators. And some of those are up, some of the senators are up for re-election this cycle, some are not, but all the House members are. And there are a lot of open seats, but there are also a lot of folks that know NSPS, and we work very closely with on both sides of the aisle. And so John Warren has a very thorough process to vet any request to do a fundraiser for a current member of Congress or senator or someone that's aspiring to federal office. And the committee members all have to basically sign off on the request. And it's very structured. And what does that mean? I've got to do my homework. I've got to actually justify. And I come up with the list of committees or the list of bills or letters or something that that clearly indicates that a member of Congress has either been very helpful and knows the profession and has taken action one way or another, or we have a good relationship with that we think potentially next Congress might be on a committee or running a committee or a subcommittee and it just makes a lot of sense strategically to do. So yes, you're right, Tim, that each quarter I'm able to attend different events, whether they're breakfasts, luncheons, receptions, or dinners. And so we have to be very judicious, though, because the PAC right now is not that large, but we have to be very selective. We have to make sure we spend that PAC money as frugally as possible and justify it. And then when we do receive letters back, Tim, from members of Congress through their campaign specifically, they'll send thank you letters. And we try to share those. Trish will get a copy of those. Christine will get a copy of those. You'll get a copy of this. And then we try to hand that out to John Warren so he can share it, not just with his committee, but also try to share it with the state affiliate that member of Congress hails from, whether it's a congressional district or if it's a senator or an at-large House member. So we try to share that with the states to see that, number one, we've been active at the PAC level, but number two, the member of Congress or senator has taken notice and actually taken the time to sign a thank you letter, and which clearly connects the dots and that they remember and actually have acknowledged that NSPS PAC continues a relationship with them or is building one with them.
Exactly. Well, then we would be amiss to not, have a little shout out to John Warren, even a little further. If nothing else, thank you for the explanation, on how PAC money works. And when you make an individual contribution to the PAC, while yes, for the most part, it's going into a fund that's allowing us to attend these fundraisers for specific candidates and such. But it also goes to the helping the entire operation on how the system works. And it's not buying access, it's supporting those that support the profession. Bottom line is that you have to have friends, you have to have people that know and understand what the profession is all about. And this gives you an opportunity to meet with those either those candidates or legislators running again, to really say, hey, thanks for supporting what we do. Obviously, we wouldn't be there as supporting them if they didn't see some value and potential in what we're doing as well. So where you can make that PAC donation, and the drive to 75. As John always says, we're trying to get the fund back up. JB has been busy, but it takes our support. It takes our opportunities to do these things.
And Tim, two last points on that as we head towards the November 8th general election for members of Congress and senators. So number one, you're exactly right about the drive to 75. Almost every single version now of News and Views, we try to highlight where we've maybe met someone who's running for office, or if it's a House member running for the Senate. If we've got a picture, we've got a quick caption, but certainly you can click on any of the links at the end of those captions, because we highlight the Jefferson Club and how to become a member of the Jefferson Club. Learn more about the drive to 75 and John Warren's leadership. And just in general, get to become a little bit more knowledgeable about the PAC itself. All of that is linkable to the different portions of the NSPS website. Again, it shows up in every version, just about every version of News and Views these days. And then finally, Tim, the second item was the upcoming fall business meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma. John Warren would definitely want us to make sure we reminded folks that there is a PAC golf outing on Wednesday, October the 12th. And so we're looking forward to that. I don't know if you want to make a plug.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, it's going to be at La Fortune Park on October 12th. And actually, we're going to mix it up this year. We're actually having basically two outings in one. That during the day, we're going to be playing the full 18-hole championship course. And in the evening, where they have a par 3 course that's actually under the lights. And that, that part of Oklahoma at 7:00 at night, we will be under the lights. Weather will be beautiful, good temperature, but I think it'll be a great opportunity even for the non-serious golfers to come out and enjoy hitting it around a little bit, playing with the rest of the group, and it should be a really good time. And we look forward to seeing you there, JB, and the rest of the regulars. And if you're in the area and want to participate, we would be more than happy to have you. And John Warren would be more than happy to see you on the course and having fun with us as well. All right. Well, what turned into a quick conversation? Well, you know what, JB, you're as thorough as you always are. And once again, from not just the officers, XCOM directors, on behalf of the members of NSPS, I'd like to thank you for all of your hard work. Pass our thanks on to John P. as well, and everybody at Miller Winhold that supports everything you do. We couldn't do it without you, and we like I said, looking forward to seeing you very soon in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Excellent, Tim. Again, thank you very much for your leadership and the opportunity to be on today's session. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
See you in Oklahoma.
You betcha. You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.